Hey everyone, welcome to the rollout. I'm Lindsay Rousseau.
And I'm Genevieve Marie. Hello and welcome.
So we haven't covered Star Wars in a while, and obviously Andor's still going on, so we're gonna hold that one off. But Disney dropped something that maybe not a lot of all of you would be aware of. They didn't do a lot of promo for it, so I'm sure the fans knew about it. But we're gonna look into their a series of shorts that they put out called Tales of the Jedi. Um, yeah, I first off just want to say this this show was spearheaded again by Dave Filoni, who was, the one behind the Clone Wars. It's definitely a show for fans. Like if you do not know Star Wars,
Yeah.
you can probably enjoy the fun stories, but this is for people that know Star Wars or at least know the film and animated versions of Star Wars. Because I think I read one review that says this is a show that just answers all those questions you didn't know you needed answering.
Yeah. So this show ended up being I wasn't really, I don't know why I wasn't aware. All of the promo that I saw kind of points to it,
Yeah.
but the show is basically like a filler between Clone Wars
And
and
Rebels and
Rebels, and yeah,
yeah.
it is kind of like when you ice a cake and then you take it out, and before you're going to serve it to to your guests, you see
Right.
that there is like some like little gaps and stuff, so you get out some icing and you're like, all right, I'm gonna just go back in, I'm gonna fill in the cracks, and now, okay, now it's perfect. Now, like, it is a seamless,
Mm.
it's a seamless final product. And I feel like that's what they did with Tales of the Jedi,
Yeah.
is that they filled in the gaps between, as you said, the Clone Wars and Rebels, and they left basically nothing up for interpretation or questioning,
No.
just as Disney is apt to do with all of their new releases and
Yeah.
things. They're just like, don't ask questions,
No.
don't philosophize or theorize
The only
anything
canon is
on,
our canon.
right. Don't
Yeah.
theorize anything on the internet. Do not go in AO3 about this. Don't, write a fanfic. Fuck you. This is what happens between.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that the series was bad.
No.
This is very distracting. I'm just gonna.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what I was going to say. I'm very conflicted about this series because I thought the animation was fantastic. The acting was superb. They brought
Yeah.
back Ashley Eccleston as Ashoka. They brought back Corey Burton, who was Cad Bane, is playing Dooku. The animation's some of the best I've ever seen. They were tight, succinct little stories. I thought everything about it was great. I just kept watching it thinking, why do I need to know this? Why can't we explore new territory? Which is
Yeah.
why I'm loving Andor, because yes, Andor is technically a prequel to a prequel, but it's diving into so much stuff that are like not even questions you remotely had. It's diving into all new different planets and worlds and factions and everything. So I'm really, really enjoying that. And we'll do a wrap up of that later. So it was like, as much as I loved really enjoyed the show, I was just like, I kind of feel like, why did you spend all this money on something when you could have spent it on,
It's a little.
I don't know, the Old Republic?
Right. It's a little devoid of creativity. Like I
Yeah.
said, if I wanted something like this, I could easily go to AO3 or Tumblr or Reddit
Right.
or fanfiction.net and then find something exactly like this, and it would probably be just as good. And and that's not to say that this was not bad. I really liked the evolution that they have done with this animation, because in the beginning, when you had the Clone Wars Clone Wars the movie
Mm-hmm.
that introduced Ahsoka, and then they moved on and then made the TV show, like, the animation was, they all looked like kind of weird, like blocky
Yeah.
maquettes, and there was very little light and shadow play. And of course, we've advanced in technology since then, but also the TV shows, the Clone Wars themselves got bigger and bigger budgets, especially the last unreleased season that they had put up, which was kind of just like a love letter to the show itself. But they knew that they knew the Clone Wars was so beloved that they would release this final season
Yeah.
onto Disney Plus, and so they took their time with it, and
Yeah.
they made a lot of really nice adjustments to how they animated these shows and
Yeah.
these features. So I really appreciated like the light play, however, the luminosity,
Mhm.
everything that they did to make these maquette style looking characters, which
Right.
they had in the beginning, look more fleshed out, more
Mhm.
realistic, and definitely more of a stylistic choice rather than
Definitely.
something that they had to deal with
Yeah.
uh, at the time, because that was all that they could really come up with and do because of the technology and budget allotted to them.
Yeah.
Um, the storylines, I think it was very interesting that it focused mainly on Ahsoka and Count
Dooku.
Dooku.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting choice because it allowed these Tales of the Jedi, the series, to be more focused, where there was the other,
Oh
uh,
yeah, if we're comparing it to the more anime,
right, the more animated series, which
it was
all of
each
those,
individuals.
they
Yeah.
were so, which is not to say it was wrong or bad, but it was more like a Love, Death, and Robots
Right. Star
sort
Wars
of.
Visions. There it
So
was.
Visions, yeah. Visions was more like a Love, Death, and Robots
Right.
sort of thing, where each one was clearly an individual contained story,
Yeah.
whereas this series was interwoven, and it had continuing narratives throughout, and then they all kind of meshed together near the end, which I really enjoyed. I
Yeah.
think if we were going to
And I'm
all,
sure part of it was they're setting up for the Ashoka series, which
yeah,
Dave Filoni is also show running. So part of me is like, okay, I'm wondering if this is one of the reasons they decided to make it focused on these two characters
right.
specifically.
So the highlight for me, I think, was the Count Dooku and, oh god, the female Yoda,
Yaddle.
Yaddle. I keep wanting to call her something else that is so similar, but it just sounds not right.
Right.
Yaddle, that's what it is. I keep wanting to call her Yordle.
Yordle.
I keep wanting to say Yordle. That is, and obviously it's not right, but it's like the first thing that my mind grabs to, but also it causes me to like brain fart. I'm like, no, it's not, but I still want to say it. I
Yeah.
still want to say Yordle. Yaddle. I think that was the highlight for me for
That
this
was a
series.
really good episode.
It was a good episode. It was dark and sad and poignant, and just I was watching it with Morgana, and her mouth just like gaped open when a spoiler alert
Oh
if you
yeah,
don't want
spoilers.
it. Spoilers, uh when the door
Mhm.
closed on her and like slammed closed on her, and you thought that she got squished like a bug.
Yeah.
But arguably, which was shocking,
It
but
was. You're like, "Oh, of all the ways for a Jedi to go out." I mean, it's like
right,
how they killed the
arguably,
Rancor.
I would say, I mean, she did get squished. She wasn't going to survive that, and I would say arguably Dooku putting her out of her misery was worse because it was kind of like watching old Yeller get pulled
Oh
like
my gosh,
down,
yes.
where you're just like, Jesus, this is
This got super dark
brutal.
super fast, yeah.
Yeah, real brutal. Which is interesting because you kind of get to see things from Dooku's perspective, like the gears of politics and the
Yes.
Jedi being involved in that. They're not turning, they don't work together. And I absolutely agree.
Well, and it
Like,
was interesting. They were
yeah,
definitely making parallels to how how the emperor was able to pull Anakin over, and basically like he reaches out to the empathy that the Jedi's have and uses it as a way to twist it, because he's like, yeah, look at all the horrible things that the Senate is doing and the Republic is doing, and the Jedi are just helping. And because like when he goes to the planet to save the ambassador's or whatever son, and realizes that they had been starving these people, it's like, yeah, I
right.
understand why he was gonna maybe kill that guy.
It's interesting because I honestly think that there is a disconnect between the Jedi sort of being the Senate's police itself,
Mm-hmm.
because and the fact that the Senate and the Jedi are not a good relationship together.
No.
Like, it's not a good working relationship to have these two entities so closely tied together. Um, because one is essentially a religious group that is also militarized,
Right.
and you have another group which is I mean, it's highly toxic, and it is highly whatchamacallit, I mean, you have a whole bunch of corruption
Yeah.
in a what is supposed to be a democratic system. um and they're trying to work together, but then at the same time the Jedi kind of, they raise their noses at and do not understand the corruption of the Senate, and yet they still can't see the weird dichotomy of their own
Right.
gig, which is like peace, but like we will also fight your ass. And it's just like the highest rank that you can
Yeah.
be as a Jedi basically is denoted by how good you are at mastering your craft, which is essentially fighting and warfare.
Right.
Um and as when Dooku's walking around the library, and
Hmm.
he goes and deletes the existence of that planet,
Of Camino, yeah.
yeah, of Camino off the map. Um, I was just pointing out to Morgan, I was just like, none of these motherfuckers are even reading a fucking book. Like, they're just walking around the halls. Like, this is not a place to just like congregate and have a conversation and just like enjoy the look of the library. Like, crack open a book, guys. Maybe this is why you fell. Maybe this
Right.
is why your
Also,
order
I'm
is
like,
so fucking
the
tough.
fact, yeah, and the fact that you can delete something that easily
Like,
and there's no backups of backups of backups,
there's
I'm
no
like,
backups, or there's no
this
like
is the only
security.
record of this planet anywhere in the galaxy.
Right. There's no safeguards.
And
There's
it
no
just took a
security.
code password. Yeah, I
Just
was just
like,
like,
no,
really?
like, no, I
No
don't like this.
two-factor authentication, no two keys need to turn at the same time. No, just boop, 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 boop,
Right.
and gone.
It's like, no, I don't really like this one. Fuck it.
Yeah, exactly.
Bye.
I was just like, that was a little too easy.
Yeah. And it always just like baffles me because you see it over and over again, especially in the Clone Wars. Like with Ahsoka, yes, I can understand because she's growing up. She's in her
Right.
teen years and she's trying to get a grasp on the world and how it works at large. But a lot of the times you'll see these Jedi's, and I mean, the main example being when Dooku and Qui-Gon go to the village and they're like, oh my God, they're starving. And like, this is why they kidnapped the son. And,
Yeah.
like, but they're so surprised. They're so surprised that a representative of their people would exploit the people and grab power for
Yeah.
themselves. It's like,
Well, also, I'm just like,
guys, why are you every time you're surprised? Not just this one time, and then you
right.
learn about like, the how power corrupts. You fucking forget about it and you're surprised every single fucking
Well,
time. They always act from this place of
yeah.
ignorance. And
And
it's
I'm
very
always,
frustrating because it's
yeah.
like you cannot be ignorant forever, guys. Like you are
No.
doing this willfully at
And
this point. Fuck you guys.
well, also, the other thing I'm wondering is like, how did nobody know what was going on this planet? I mean, again, we're in the future, or well,
Right.
a long time, whatever, we're in the past, but you know, technology is so advanced. And if Andor has showed us anything, it's that people find ways to get their messages out there. They climb up in, you know, silos and, you know, manually send
Right.
out their messages. I'm like, these people are starving on this planet and no other senators knew about it.
Just like,
None
none
of
of
the
you
Jedi knew about
motherfuckers
it.
know how to write into your Senate.
Also, could yeah, right? It's like you can't call your representative. Also, I'm like, couldn't the
But
Jedi feel the suffering? Like that's a thing that has been brought up in the Star Wars
yes,
franchise many,
truth.
many times. It's like, I feel their suffering. You couldn't feel an entire planet starving to death? Come now, Qui-Gon, Dooku, you are weak, weak masters. Well, to be
Oh
fair,
god.
Qui-Gon was still
I
kind of Padawan, not Padawan, but yes.
I appreciate that when I saw Qui-Gon enter the scene, I'm just like, that motherfucker's Qui-Gon Jinn.
Oh, and
I'm like,
instantly. And I was very, very happy it was Liam Neeson who was
he
doing
has
his
an
voice.
insane case of Liam Neeson face. I was like,
Oh, instantly recognizable.
um, that being said, it boggles my mind just how ignorant the Jedi are. And yet they're given this insane amount of power. They literally are the universe's police.
Yeah,
And and the people that are everybody who tries to hold them accountable ends up being conveniently evil. Uh or they get turned evil, they get turned to the dark side. And it's like that is highly convenient. That every one of that there isn't just a faction out there that is like, no, guys, like how about this way of life instead? I mean, you kind of get that with Satine Craze, uh,
a little bit. Yeah,
a little bit, but she also takes sort of the view of just being neutral and fucking out of the
yeah,
situation and being more like, we're gonna go do our thing over here on Mandalore, and you guys and everybody else can just
yeah.
fuck
Well,
off and
and this
suffer.
is why, and we talked about this probably a couple years ago now. This is why I am so adamant that we need an Old Republic series or movie
Mhm.
or something, because we need to understand how the Jedi ended up like this and how the Sith ended up like this. And the we've said before, the Old Republic is just ripe for storytelling. There's, you know, it's the Jedi and the Sith in their heyday. There's so much going on, so much to tell. But what
Right.
it really, for those who have played the video games or read the books, it's like it really delves into why the Sith broke off from the Jedi. And it wasn't originally about wanting power over the entire universe.
Or
It wasn't corruption.
yeah.
It was basically, this was a group of people who didn't agree with the strict kind of religiosity of the Jedi, who wanted to have relationships, who wanted to get married, who wanted to have kids. I mean, that's how the Sith were originally, you know, born. And like, it's much easier to understand them and empathize with them in this Old Republic era and start to realize, oh, the Jedi have been put on this pedestal, but like, they have a good point. Like, yeah, they are unquestioning. They follow blindly sometimes, and they are very rigid in their belief structure a lot of times, which, like you said, ends up where they're surprised that people can be so corrupt and evil. But these are
They
democratically elected officials. Maybe.
yeah, like the good versus evil dichotomy, it doesn't really it doesn't play a such a stark factor in the Old Republic.
Mm.
It is definitely shades of gray, and the Jedi come out looking more like Scientologists
A
than
little
they
bit.
do
Yeah.
like saviors of the universe.
Right.
Um, which yeah, it's I really would like to finally have like a TV show or something to address these things that they kind of skirt the lines of and be like, oh, but the Jedi aren't always like right. They aren't always like so good. And, like sometimes they make mistakes. And it's like, but show us how
Yeah.
and show us why and show us when, like, give us historical precedent to go by, to go off of, put it in the films, put it in the TV shows
Right.
so we can finally like make the connection, you
Right.
know?
And as much as obviously, and who knows who's making the decisions, if it's Kathleen Kennedy, if it's whomever, to again keep us locked into this Star Wars era, um, as much as I loved Ashoka when she first came out in the Clone Wars in 2008, and thought it was fun when she popped up in The Mandalorian, it's like it's going to be 2023 by the time that show comes out. We first were introduced to her in 2008. We really need to keep doing this. Same thing with,
I
Obi-Wan, like loved, Ewan McGregor and loved the original trilogy, but it's like, did we really need, we're spanning 4 or 5 decades now worth of the same characters.
we
Just give us
needed
something
Obi-Wan.
new. Which
Fuck
again
you,
is why
Lindsay.
I'm loving Andor, because it's like we only had Rogue One. That's the first time he appeared. It was amazing, this new character. And we're getting all these stories with characters we have never seen before, except obviously Mon Mothma. But arguably, she had such a small role in the original Star Wars trilogy that, like, I don't really count that. I'm
Right.
just like, Disney, come on. We don't need 4 decades of the same characters, even if they're beloved and you're going to sell more toys. I know you are, but please give us something new.
Yeah, and it's we're getting what we're getting specifically because of what I just said earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Like I even though I know we did not need an Obi-Wan series, like god damn it if I didn't go fucking crazy for it.
Oh, yeah.
I know, and with Ahsoka, as far as Ahsoka goes, I think that that is unfortunately fast approaching an expiry date that really needed the trigger pulled on it
Yeah.
before they just decided to add in all of this filler content and tease the idea of having Ahsoka show, Ahsoka show, Ahsoka show. And it's like, yeah, we get it. Like, stop dangling, the carrot in front of us and just give us the damn thing. Because by the point it comes around, I'm just gonna be fucking tired and be like, all right. And anything that arrives, on Disney Plus, that is, the Ahsoka Tano show, is probably not going to be as breathtakingly awesome as what we have all conceived in our brains.
Yeah.
Because
Which
we've
is
had such a long time, we've had such a long wait, and it's just like, I honestly don't think anything is worth this wait because it's been like over 5 years. It's been over half a
yeah.
decade since people
Well,
have been clamoring for Ahsoka
yes.
only
Material,
content.
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I think the same thing could be said, and I'm gonna bring it up yet again, the Book of Boba Fett. People were clamoring for arguably decades to get a Boba Fett spinoff because
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
loved the awesome design of this cool ass character that had 2 lines. Don't get me wrong, fantastic. Even though
It's a cool look.
he had an amazing look, and then they retconned a bunch of shit. Anyways, everyone was clamoring for this. We finally get it. There was all this hype, bringing back the original actor from the prequels, and boy, oh boy, did it just fall on its face and disappoint epically. Like, not even, like Obi-Wan, I kind of enjoyed and still had issues with it, but I really found it very hard to find anything enjoyable about the Book of Boba Fett. And we did an entire episode on it, so I'm not going to rehash it here. Just
Yeah.
saying, when you have this much buildup,
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Book of Boba Fett was never going to be good. Simply because The Mandalorian existed before it. I would even say that the Book of Boba Fett just turned into the bridge into the next season of The Mandalorian halfway through, because somewhere along the lines, the creators themselves did not believe in their vision of a Boba Fett helmed show, because what the fuck does Boba Fett have to begin with? He has a cool outfit
Yep. We know
and
he was a bounty hunter,
right, he has a cool outfit, a cool ship, and I don't even know what the fuck
which
else.
by the way, they renamed in the
Yeah.
show.
I mean, this character existed on aesthetic and vibes alone.
Yeah.
Um, which is absolutely fine because sometimes you just need those characters. Like Mon Mothma, perfect example. This is a character who you don't need her to say very much. You look at her, she says her like 2 or 3 lines, whatever she's got. You assume that she's in a position of high power within the rebellion, and you're like, cool, I pretty much know your deal without you having to say this fucking sunlight. I pretty much know how, your deal without you having to expand anything about your character. I get it.
Which they do in Andor, but they do it in a way that makes sense. They're not going back in time at all. They're just like, y'all know who she is. She's part of the rebellion. She's a senator. That's all you need to know. Moving forward with the story.
Right.
Great.
Whereas they want to build up this lore around they want to build up this lore around a character that they just built and was like, this guy's cool. Uh like from the original, from the get-go, they built him, they drew him for, of all things, the Christmas special, the fucking holiday special,
Mhm.
and they expanded on that because they're like, oh, the one thing that people were actually grabbing onto during that horrendous holiday special was, who is this character? And so
Yes.
we decided, let's expand on who this character is. Let's build him, up for, the movie. He's in the movie for like 5 seconds, like
Yeah.
barely any screen time, and everybody loses their shit over him because, again, aesthetics and vibes.
Right.
And there really is nothing needed to expand upon him because when you have the Mandalorian to have his own backstory and his own intricate journey, you don't really need another story about another Mandalorian. Like
Right.
the Mandalorian and Boba Fett, and don't jump on me for this, internet, but they easily could just, you could just switch the names. You could just, and it that could have been easily a Boba Fett story.
Yeah.
It really could have. And so you didn't need these two competing characters who were pretty much the same exact character to compete with each other.
Right.
And especially not at the same time when you have one that is extremely successful and the other that you're just trying to get off the ground.
Right.
Um, and then you try and get this character off the ground mid-season by introducing the character that was already the perfect replacement
Right.
for him, the modern updated version of this character. You
Right.
bring him in to just kind of be like the tent poles of
Right.
of the show. So somewhere along the lines, this is all to say that somewhere along the lines, the Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett turned into the bridge into the next Mandalorian
Right.
season.
Exactly. It was a backdoor, series premiere for season 3,
It
which
was
people
brilliant.
and I think Disney also knew, oh crap, people are clamoring for more Mandalorian. Well, instead of just giving us like a holiday special, like, they're planning to do with Guardians of the Galaxy. But all that being said, obviously I have faith with Dave Filoni at the helm that Ashoka is not going to end up like the Book of Boba Fett. But I have to say, and again, don't hate on me, internet. There's been a lot of time, but I was less than impressed with her appearance in The Mandalorian. It was fast. I still take issue with the fact that, she has this epic lightsaber fight with a woman who is, and excuse me for blanking on her name right now, but she is a world renowned stunt woman and martial artist. And the fact that you didn't allow a fight scene on screen to happen, and you just have the Mandalorian being like, they're fighting. Oh, should we help? No, they're fine. I still take issue with that. That's just my personal pet peeve from the Mandalorian. But I keep coming back to, even if these things are enjoyable, why do we need them? And that's essentially how I felt about this. I thought it was cute. It took me no time to watch them all. So thankfully,
Oh
I
my
didn't
god, it
waste
was so
like 10 hours trying to watch this. And that's probably the reason I'm not annoyed by it. But I just keep wondering why
yeah, one of them.
Disney is just refusing to let go of the Skywalker era. It's like literally they are just clinging for dear life to let go of the Skywalker era. And it
It's
flabbergasts
that's
me.
okay, so it's all about who is making the decisions and
Of
who's in the
course.
room. It's all about and I was watching I was watching a YouTube video about a basically a very famous actor just was bullied by the online community lately to come out
Oh yeah.
um
Yep. He said he
and
felt like he was forced out. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't disagree. I don't disagree with his standpoint because I a lot was riding off on him either coming out or staying in the closet. A lot was riding on this. The show in particular, because there was a large part of the audience that was probably going to drop it or not watch it or
Yeah.
like hate review it or hate bomb it if he didn't come out and if he didn't claim to be a part of the community. And so he did come out as bi and he's basically just said, yeah, I'm bi, fuck you, internet. Like
Yeah.
now you
Thanks for
can watch
bullying
this.
me.
Right, exactly. Now you can watch the show with the assurance that you bullied a 18-year-old into coming out of the closet when, basically they weren't ready.
Yeah.
Which is terrible. Um, all that to say that you know, I it's about having people in the room that make these decisions. And unfortunately for this particular actor, they were being flown out to Hollywood, being, sweet talked or, in talks with Warner Brothers and a whole bunch of other studios, probably for very large roles before having come out. And this kid, he has a lot of opportunities ahead of him,
Yeah.
and being forced out of the closet might, unfortunately, because of the way Hollywood still runs
Yeah.
today, would squash those opportunities because they might be like, well, I guess, well, we don't think that you are a good replacement for the Flash because I don't think that you're really relatable to audiences because you're not, you don't fit into the mainstream
Right.
ideals of what people of America want. So I'm
Yeah.
sorry we can't offer you this role anymore. We were considering you though. Um, but the people in the room making those decisions, as much as we want to say that we are making strides, I'm sorry, I'm trying to like get away from the
I
light.
see. That's fine.
I, as much as we're saying that, we are making strides and we are doing better as far as representation about inclusion, ultimately the decisions that are being handed down are coming from people who are not a part of the community. They're coming from people who are a lot older,
A lot
who
older. Yeah.
they're a lot older, they're very stuck in their ways.
Mhm.
They think that they know, what audiences want based on what they wanted back in the early 2000s to
And
the
maybe even
90s
earlier.
to the 90s to the 80s because they've been around that long. I
Yep.
mean, they've been around since since the early 80s and they're still making huge decisions based on you know, that affect what we no, that's not right. That affect what ultimately we get to see in TV shows and movies. It comes down to what we see as far as representation. It comes down to as far as we see which actors get which roles just based on their gender, sexual
Yeah.
orientation, or, you know, race alone. And it has nothing to do with representation within the media. It's people just having these you know, these identities, even being allowed to play the game, so to speak,
Yeah.
or, you know, being invited to the table. So when we're talking about Star Wars and we're talking about the Luke Skywalker era, we still have to go back to the large table filled with these old, usually, you know, usually men,
Usually
usually white.
white. I mean, obviously, yes, we
um
have Kathleen Kennedy, but
yeah, we
she
have
is
Kathleen,
also of an era.
but
She was with Lucas for a
white
long time.
woman. uh, and you know, and she's been around for a really long time, and that's not to say that she isn't still very much affected by the culture, the Hollywood culture of old that she has, you know, had to grow up around,
Yeah.
and that she in many ways is influenced by and is influencing the new people coming in.
Yeah.
So when we look at the Skywalker era, that's what they see that makes money.
Yeah.
And they don't really understand. I mean, they don't fucking understand video games or video
Well,
game
and I was
culture.
gonna say
They
I
don't
have
understand that like the old republic and these other storylines and these other timelines are very precious and important to
and have
people, but they don't
massive
give a shit.
fandoms. Well, and I was really hoping when we heard the rumors about KOTOR 3 being in development, I was over the moon because
Hmm.
ask any gamer, or at least gamers that play open world games or play that, play RPGs, KOTOR 1 and 2 arguably have some of the best storytelling in all of video games, some of the best reveals, all of that. So when the third one I heard was in development, I was like, fantastic. We're finally going to get some Old Republic. And now with how big video games are, I was like, this is what's going to finally influence Disney to break out of the Skywalker era. And then a couple months ago, freaking Twitter blows up and we find out it's indefinitely delayed.
Ooh.
So
Oh, sorry.
not canceled, but we may never. So I was like, oh, our one hope, one hope, of like pushing Disney out of the Skywalker era just crumbled. Also, I really wanted a KOTOR 3 because I just love the games so much that I named a cat after one of the characters. So, anywho, we have digressed greatly,
I
but
mean, it's all in the service of
yes,
you know, it's all in the service of the medium, the genre, um, of the franchise, and the future of it, where we are, where we're going, um, and the people involved that make us either backtrack or not backtrack or not make ground at all, or you know, are just inching towards
yeah,
getting somewhere that's a little bit different.
yes. We are
And
getting a female woman of color led show. So, yay for that.
yeah,
We could have
um,
had a Bastila show. I'm just saying. Just saying.
but we're also going to cover Andor once it's
Yeah.
completely once the run is completely finished, all episodes out. We're going to do a recap of
Yeah.
Andor, and I'm sure we'll have a lot to say and philosophize about that. Um, but look what kind of conversations have sparked, you know, from
From
just
these tiny little
a
6
tiny
shorts.
little short film show.
Yeah. So I'm
Uh,
sure it was none of the conversations you probably had with your friends and family when you watch this,
or
but this
maybe.
maybe it is,
I
in which
don't know.
case,
I don't
please
know
let
what
us
you
know in the
guys get up
comments.
to.
But
Um,
this is where our brains always go,
right.
so
I mean, like, it's very weird. People are get very in depth about Star Wars, and so I don't doubt that you guys aren't having like similar conversations.
yeah,
Because I mean, this stuff is very precious to a lot of people.
yeah.
And it is a huge part of our lexicon as far as media goes and
Well,
media.
it is Star Wars is not a copyrightable word anymore.
Oh,
When
I did not
Disney
know
tried
that.
to sue over it, there was a judicial
Oh,
decision that said Star Wars is so ingrained in our society and our culture now that it is essentially common use or whatever the legal term is for that. So
I
fun fact there, that's how
very
ingrained Star Wars is to our society
I had
and
no
to our
idea.
zeitgeist. Yeah.
That's actually really interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Cool.
Anyways,
I
so you know what? If you're a Star Wars fan and you have
like it.
had all these questions itching in your brain, especially if you're a fan of the Clone Wars, and Rebels and the prequels, you're probably gonna love it. Again, we didn't have an issue with the show. The animation, some of the best we've seen come out of Disney/Star Wars yet. Acting, always fantastic. We just don't know if we needed it. That's all. So
Right.
enjoy it. It's a short watch, you know.
I know. It's not gonna make you mad.
It will not make you mad. I will not,
If
I am not
anything,
going to spend 3 weeks seething about said show, which I will not name again and constantly bring up and reference. Um, but it's
if
just one of those, it just goes to what we've talked about several times on the show about Disney's big picture thinking, which we just went into in depth about. They just need to start pushing the envelope and thinking outside the box. Yeah.
right. They do
So,
what they do, they most of the time they do what they do well when they're not trying to make a feature length film.
right,
For the
exactly.
most part,
Well, it's kind of like
especially
DC.
with Dave Filoni
Yeah. Yeah.
producing it. Um, yeah,
Yeah. So let us know
that's
your
it.
thoughts.
Yeah, no, yeah. We've talked enough. Let's hear your thoughts down in the comments. Love to hear it. And we will be back with with Andor when it's done.
When it's done. Yeah. We'll figure out some other stuff to cover before then.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right.
All right. We're the rollout.
And we will
We will
geek
geek
with
with you
you
next
next week.
week.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it.